relative, the claim that the relative will be ended by the absolute is nothing short of ludicrous. For men who nourish a belief in human self-determination and perfectibility, the very idea that we are accountable and dependent is a bitter pill to swallow. No wonder they mocked, end quote. They want to ignore the inexorable law of Romans 1:18, that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness. This shows up nowhere more clearly than in evolution. Notable evolutionist and denier of divine creation, divine intervention, and divine judgment was Aldous Huxley, the grandson of Thomas Huxley. He wrote Confessions of a Professed Atheist. Listen to what he said. Most insightful. This is Aldous Huxley, the brother of Julian. He wrote this. I had motives for not wanting the world to have meaning, consequently assumed it had none, and was able without any difficulty to find satisfying reasons for this assumption. The philosopher who finds no meaning in the world is not concerned exclusively with a problem in pure metaphysics. He's also concerned to prove that there's no valid reason why he should personally not do just what he wants to do. For myself, writes Huxley, as no doubt for most of my contemporaries, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation. The liberation we desired was simultaneously a liberation from a certain political and economic system, listen to this, and a liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom, end quote. Evolution is not the child of science. It is the child of sexual liberation. It is not produced by people who have come to it purely from the intellectual. It is produced by people who wanted no meaning to culture, no meaning to behavior, no judgment, no accountability, no God, so they could live any way they want to live. It's a moral issue, not an intellectual issue. There is the real reason for believing in atheism, evolution, or liberal theology. Eliminate accountability. Eliminate judgment. And if you believe in God, then God is a loving God who just sits up there and smiles at everything. You have to deny that God will judge sin if you're going to free yourself up to sin to the max, right? Don't kid yourself for a moment. These people parading themselves around as intellectuals are not intellectuals. They are moral midgets. They want liberation for sexual freedom, and they want an accommodating philosophy. So underneath their denial of the return of Christ, to judge is the love of lustful passion, and they want that without accountability. There's the argument from ridicule, the argument from morality. One other one, I'm just going to touch on it. Verse 4. This is the argument from uniformity. Here's their big argument. Verse 4. Now we're going to get intellectual. We've passed the ridicule and the emotional argument. We've gone through the moral argument. Now we're coming to their best shot intellectually, okay? This is their best shot. Verse 4. Where is the promise of his coming? Here comes their intellect. For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all continues just as it was from the beginning of creation. That's their argument. Well, you say, what are they saying? They're saying, Jesus will never come. Why? Because he never has. Everything it's like saying, I'll never die. I never have. The false teachers are capitalizing on this revisionist history. They're rewriting history. They use the emotional argument, and then they use the moral argument, and now they use the philosophical, intellectual argument, and they become revisionist historians. And this is what they say. Well, ever since the fathers fell asleep. What do you mean by that? Who are the fathers? Some say the fathers of the Christian faith. It could be. Could be they're talking about first generation Christians that have died. That's pretty remote. Every time you see the term fathers, every New Testament reference to fathers elsewhere in the New Testament refers to the Old Testament patriarchs. And that's what they're really saying. They're going back, follow my thought, they're going back to Genesis and saying, look, everything's always gone along the same. Since the patriarchs. Go way back to the very beginning. Everything's just gone along the same. You will note Romans 9:5, Hebrews 1:1 references to the fathers that definitely mean the Old Testament patriarchs. They're not arguing from a recent argument. They're arguing as far back as they can reach to show uniformity, to show immutability. Nothing ever changes. Continuity. Gradual unchanging process. So they're really saying, cataclysmic events don't happen. They just don't happen. Things like great divine intervention and judgment. That doesn't happen. Ever since the fathers fell asleep, you remember that's a New Testament term for death. In fact, a cemetery comes from the Greek word sleeping place, which was the optimistic name given to graveyards by Christians. So, since the first people died, since the patriarchs died, follow this statement, verse 4. All continues just as it was from the beginning of creation. This is their intellectual, philosophical argument. Listen to this. It is the argument of uniformitarianism or immutability. This is the philosophy of the sinner. And what comes from it that we know most in our society? Evolution. Evolution is uniformitarian. What does evolution say? Everything moves along inexorably at exactly the same pace. There's no God, there's no change, there's no judgment, there's no nothing. Everything goes exactly like this. And you know what they say? They say, we watched it and it went like this, and so it's always gone like this. And when it started here and ended there, it took this long. So if we keep going back at the same pace, the same pace, the same pace, the same pace, then everything's 5 billion years old. That's uniformity, uniformitarianism. It is the philosophy of constancy. Satan invented it real early. Real early. Now, you know uniformitarian evolution as the brainchild of Thomas Lyell, first of all, followed by Darwin, followed by Huxley. But that came along way before those guys. Those guys are nothing but Johnny-come-latelys. That thing was well developed right here in 2 Peter 3. What they're saying